From WCI3 Plus, with your host, Kevin Lighty, this is Behind the Forecast.
Hey, everybody, you're back. Or maybe this is the first time you've tuned into the show. I'm WCA3 Chief Meteorologist Kevin Lighty. Thanks so much for joining me here for another edition of Behind the Forecast. So basically our show here, we start things out with viral weather videos of the week. Then we go into our interview portion, which this week is going to include Illinois State Climatologist Dr. Trent Ford joining us. We're going to talk a little bit about, hey, has it been less snowier than usual in parts of Illinois? How about all that wind that we've had? Is it windier now than it ever has been? About those dust storms that we've had. How abnormal is that? Or is it just the norm now? And so many other topics we're going to talk with him. So that's coming up here a little bit later on in the show. So stick around for that. But as I mentioned, we kick things off with number 5 video. We do 5 videos here. We count them down from 5 to number 1. And here we go with video number 1. It's actually from satellite. And this is Hurricane Erin that's been churning out in the Atlantic there and off the coast of the Carolinas. So this hurricane is actually one of the first hurricanes there in the Atlantic season. They're kind of coming in there. And it is going to just miss actually making landfall as far as the eye goes. But boy, it's dropping some heavy rainfall and kind of the outer bands there on the Carolina coast, and also creating some rip tides there. So that's kind of been the biggest issue with those storms that are down there. But it's just interesting to watch that view there from the satellite, seeing our hurricane develop. And it's just the beginning of hurricane season. Video number 4 is going to take us out to California, Sonoma, Lake Napa area out in California, dealing with fires again. This is called the Smittle fire. They give all of these fires a different name here, and that's what we're looking at there. On the Boggs Mountain, we're being told there, aggressive attack. I just think this video is really cool to watch. The helicopters come in, pick up that water from whatever water source that is there, at lake, probably pond or whatever, and then they come in, they fly that thing, and then just drop the water. I mean, that is just incredible footage there to watch them, all the folks and the first responders doing what they can to save what they can out there in California. All right, let's go to viral video number 3, and this is a flood rescue from a car in Hamilton County, Tennessee. Take a look at this. Wow, pretty remarkable stuff here. Let's get a little bit more about kind of what's happening. Essentially, they got a ton of rain out there. They had 60 vehicles that were flooded, and people were stuck in their cars. And especially this one right here. This video shows this vehicle. Look at it floating. That's the power of water, okay? You can pick the vehicles up. It says floating like a toy in a bathtub. But let's run this back and look at the gentleman that has a rock, and he's banging it against the window to try to break it to get out the child that is in the vehicle there. You can see now the broken window, and pulls out the child. Just amazing rescue work. I don't know if this was just a regular individual that was just kind of helping out, but wow, look at that. Crawling out. Dangerous stuff, scary stuff, and fortunately all okay after the heavy rains down in Tennessee. All right, that was our number 3 video. Let's go to number 2. And this is lightning. Okay, here we go. Lightning hits the ATC tower, air traffic control tower. So there you are. There's a passenger there. It's on their plane. You're obviously waiting to take off. Then all of a sudden, you're going to see it here in a second. Right in the middle part of your screen, you can see the ATC tower in the distance. And a big lightning bolt's going to strike it. Boom. Now it was quick. I know it was really quick there, so what we'll do, we're going to run it back, and then we're going to slow it down for you and kind of freeze frame it. But obviously, lightning likes to hit the tallest objects that are around, and, well, that ATC control tower is who, obviously, they're up there talking to the people and the pilots on the plane and letting them know to land and to take off. But, boy, you're up in that thing. I bet that is pretty scary. And take a look at, we're going to show you again that freeze frame of the lightning strike, boom, hitting the tower. Ooh. Scary stuff there. All right. This one, kind of scary depending upon how you look at it, but it's our number one viral video of the week. Fireball in the sky. That's right. This is actually happening in Japan. Okay, fireball spotted there, lighting up the night sky, hues of green and blue as it fell. So this is actually dash cam footage that came in. I always encourage people to get a dash cam. You just never know what you're going to capture, whether it's phenomenons like this or obviously, you get into a little fender bender, but these dash cams are just catching so much and becoming so common out there. But this fireball vibrated the area. Vibrations felt across parts of Japan when this came through. So those meteorites, you got to watch out. Burning up in the atmosphere, a lot of energy there released. And so that's what we looked at there in terms of the fireball. All right, guys, it is about time to kick off our interview segment. As I mentioned, we have got Dr. Trent Ford, Illinois State climatologist. He is going to be joining us, and we're looking forward to having him in here with us to talk a little bit more about the climate of things and answer some interesting questions that I think that maybe all of you have been thinking about as well, over the course of the last, year or so. A lot of kind of timely topics, as I mentioned, wind and snow and these dust storms, and maybe how you can actually help out in some of the observations. So that is coming up. Stick around. We're going to take a little bit of a short break, but we'll be back with much more here on Behind the Forecast. Everybody, welcome into another edition of Behind the Forecast. I am WCA3 Chief Meteorologist Kevin Lighty. I'm so glad you guys came back here with us for another edition of the awesome show here as we get to the interview portion of the show. And we always like to bring in somebody in the field, somebody that's impacted by weather. In this case, somebody that studies a lot about weather and climate here in Illinois. And there's not a better person than the Illinois State Climatologist. We say hello to Dr. Trent Ford. How are you doing, Mr. Ford?
I'm doing well, Kevin. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Glad to have you in here. We're going to talk a lot of weather, climate things with our folks out there and kind of get a little bit more. Let's start things off talking about yourself. Give us a little bit more about your background and kind of how you got into doing what you do.
Yeah. So I was born and raised in a town called Roanoke, Illinois, about 20 miles east of Peoria. So I'm from Central Illinois originally. And yeah, I was always interested in kind of how things change across space. So you drive across the spine of Illinois from Cairo up to Rockford and see how landscapes change. And so I did study geography at Illinois State University, and then had a professor who pulled me into climate. And I was always interested in weather, but then go to one of those programs and you get the calculus load and everything like that. And I was like, I don't want to touch that. So we do more of the climate work, and just really never looked back. I spent after grad school, spent 4 years as a professor at SIU in Carbondale, and then this position, my current position, opened up. My predecessor Jim Angel had been in there for 20 years. His predecessor had been there for 20 years. So it's not a job that opens up very often, and it's also pretty unique. So I took it, got closer to my family, to my wife's family, and the state climatologist, it's an interesting job because it's a researcher. I'm a climate researcher by training, so I do research on especially extreme climate events like droughts and extreme heat. But a big part of the state climatologist work is also doing a lot of engagement. So there's a lot of media work, there's public speaking, going to different events, being kind of contact person or point person when it comes to climate on a lot of the state works, the state agency work, so being in plans, committees, things like that. And I love it when compared to, I love my time at SIU as a professor. It was really interesting. I was involved with a lot of students, but in this role I've been in for now 6 years, it's been I feel like I'm having a much larger impact. I'm able to talk with folks and consult with folks about how weather, climate, and of course the big topic that a lot of people are interested in is climate change, how those things are affecting everybody. So
I can say what would you say is kind of the number one question that you may get from people when people are asking you about, weather or climate, or as the state climatologist? Is there a topic? Is there a certain specific thing that people ask you a lot about?
Well, from a media standpoint, corn sweat is
Corn sweat. Yeah,
it comes up every year.
Corn sweat.
We can tell the first time,
yeah.
the first heat wave, or the first just hot, humid day in May, corn sweat comes up, and then it doesn't end. Even last year, I got a corn sweat question because we had a particularly warm day in like late October. And somebody's like, "Is this corn sweat?" Because I was like, "No, man, the corn's been dead for a month. It's not." But that comes up a lot. But then, from people around the state, one of the, I don't know if it's a question, but sort of a supposition. It's like they're just trying to confirm what they already know, and that is, it's getting windier across Illinois.
And I get that one a ton too.
No matter what, you could have spent your entire life in Wrigleyville, or in the most rural part of Western Illinois, far southern Illinois, no matter where you grew up, people all across the state think it's getting windier. And all of our measurements, all the data evidence we have said, no, we're not getting windier, no consistent trend. And yet everybody and their dog thinks it. So it is really interesting to go around and see that out of all the things, the diversity of thought and everything, it's the wind that kind of brings people together.
From your seat and your standpoint there, it's just as windy now as it was 20 years ago.
Yeah. We just don't see consistent evidence. You go from one station to another station, and as you know, you have weather stations that are impacted by buildings and corn and everything else that's going on, so it's really hard to measure the wind. So we'd want to see a consistent signal in wind speed over long periods of time. We just don't. No matter the season, no matter how we characterize wind, it's not there.
You're right. I get that question a lot. It's kind of the similar thing, and I know you've heard this too, the whole, it never storms. The storm always splits around my area. Never. I think I've heard that from somebody in every town I've ever met. Right?
Yeah.
Is that something?
Absolutely. And by that measure, nobody ever gets rain. Right?
That's exactly right.
And I think the reason being is that when you're in drought, especially if you're a farmer and your livelihood depends on it, when you're in drought, there's nothing you can do. You can't move water out of the way because there's no water there. And so people remember when the storms split and go around them, but when the storms hit them, they get an inch of rain. Now their mind switches to something else. They don't care anymore. Yeah. So it's the same thing. The storms always split around us.
The psyche behind it is really interesting.
And everybody's got a different reason for it. If you live downwind of a city, St. Louis splits the storms. The Mississippi River splits the storms. And it's always something, and it is pretty consistent. It's always fascinating.
It really is, and it's funny we kind of hear the same things a lot. But there you go, folks. You heard it from the Illinois State Climatologist. It has not been windier, than previous years. It's kind of consistent there. Okay, so I want to give you a little perspective with the Illinois water survey. Mm-hmm. We hear that term a lot. Some people that are familiar with that at the university. Could you get a little bit more about the water survey and how it's connected still to, because there's weather data and climate data that you guys do a lot of, but the word water in the title may have some people be like, wait, water? What? So a little bit more about the Illinois Water Survey.
Yeah. So just a little background. So I am part of the State Water Survey, which is part of the Prairie Research Institute, which is under the University of Illinois. So it's like an umbrella of affiliations. The State Water Survey has been around and actually has been in Champaign-Urbana for 130 years now. Yeah. So it's been around for a long, long time. It was started at the university as a response to actually a public health problem, which was cholera in drinking water all across East Central and Central Illinois. So we started they started the water survey as more of a public health, water quality. And as Illinois developed over the late 19th century, early 20th century, they saw more and more need to study not only water from a quality perspective, but also from a quantity perspective, understanding how water flows, if there's too much or not enough water, which of course we deal with all across Illinois. And over that time, we started to see the fields of meteorology and climatology really develop in full, and the State Water Survey, because water is a huge part of meteorology, of weather and climate. It took on a major weather and climate research role. And so some of some really important work has happened over the last 100 years at Water Survey. It was the first, for example, the first tornado caught on radar, the Doppler radar.
Yes,
the first,
right.
the first time they documented urban areas can actually affect rainfall. We were just making fun of everybody for saying they split around the storms, but actually, the metro, the St. Louis metro area was the first urban area to document that it can actually influence the amount of rainfall downstream. And a lot of other work that's going on the last 130 years. And so the Water Survey is still going very strong. We have a big climate component, do a lot of groundwater and surface water modeling. The CHAMP group at Water Survey runs most of the state's flood mapping programs through FEMA. So it's still a vibrant organization, along with its sisters, the Sustainable Technology Center, the Archaeological Survey, Natural History Survey, Geological Survey. So it's a great organization. And what I like, I think, more than anything about it is that I am one of the few people at the Water Survey who study climate. So I'm always working with hydrologists and urban planners and geologists. And so we can work on really important but themes that kind of cut across different issues. And that's really enjoyable.
So, and here's something that, and I know we've had this conversation before a little bit about, you guys at the Water Survey have a record of data that goes back a really long distance to give perspective into, well, the climate and how, how and records and whatnot. And there is sometimes the confusion about the temperature that we show on TV comes from Willard Airport.
Yeah.
But they don't have the same kind of data record. Can you talk a little bit more about, the history that you guys have there, the Water Survey versus Willard, and how you can't compare the two essentially?
Yeah. So weather observations began at Willard back in the 1970s. And as with most airports, they're automated, or they became automated. So they're taking sub-hourly, so multiple times per hour, oftentimes, regular observations that are immediately streamed so that you can pull them in. So it's a lot easier if you need that real-time feed. But like you mentioned, it really only goes back to the 1970s, so we missed past beyond that 120 years or so. So by comparison, back in the 1880s, the university started one of the first consistent weather observation or weather stations that was actually on campus in the Morrow Plots. And it was there measuring daily weather, and then got rolled into the National Weather Service co-op program, which is just observers all across the country taking observations. And it was stayed at the Morrow Plots until 1984, when the university was developing so much around it that the Water Survey, the people who were running at the time, decided it was going to be messing with the temperature records and things like that. So for those long stations, we really want that long history of uninterrupted weather and climate data. That's how we measure a change in climate, for example. So that in 1984, the station was moved down to the Water Survey, where it's been today. And so, like you mentioned, we don't take hourly observations. We take daily summary observations, so daily high temperature, low temperature precipitation. And as you know, we from 2021 to 2024, I guess late 2024, we had an automated feed. And that was thanks to the National Weather Service. We can't actually work on the station because it is, even though we run it, it's the National Weather Service property. And they had some trouble. So back in 2020, when pandemic happened, the university literally locked us out of our weather station. So we actually lost about 20 days worth of data, which was the most since 1888, which just drove me nuts.
I bet.
It's like I was like, and I actually mentioned, I was like, what if I just climb over the fence, right, to get it, because they locked it and they said you could be terminated. So anyway, 2020, so the National Weather Service puts in the automated station. And then the stinking thing gets hit by lightning last September, and so, which is ironic, I guess. So we're still taking daily observations. We don't have the real-time feed now, but
there's a cost to fix that, right?
There
is,
and it's. There was a backup of fixes for the National Weather Service, and certainly right now with the situation of cuts from the National Weather Service and NOAA, they're really unable to fix it right now. So we still have daily observations. That won't go away.
So that record of 120 plus years, still getting that now on a daily kind of high-low precipitation
That's right.
basis.
And folks can go on multiple websites, including the State Climate Office website, and see our daily observations that are updated usually around 8 a.m. every morning. And then we also do, in addition to the temperature, high-low temperature precipitation, we also do evaporation this time of year. So from roughly April through October, we do daily evaporation rates. From pan evaporation, we also do snowfall. And snow is, I'll just say to everybody, snow is by far the hardest thing to measure. It moves around, it blows, it melts, it refreezes, but we still take that daily snow observation every day.
The snow observations are interesting, and that kind of pivots to kind of what I want to talk about as far as measurements go. So Willard Airport has an observation station. You guys do. Mm-hmm. Talk about the differences that you can have in just a few miles, temperature, precipitation, snowfall. What are some of the things that go into why there can be such a difference between observation stations, especially rural versus city, right? Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So if you think about where Willard is, it is the weather station is near large amounts of tarmac, surrounded by corn, but is pretty much open to the elements. Where the water survey station is near the corner of Windsor and First Street. So it's not necessarily in the most developed part of Champaign and Urbana, but it's still definitely more developed. So what that means is, generally speaking, in the summertime, our high temperatures measured at the water survey are not going to be quite as high as it is at Willard. So there'll be times where we'll have what would have been a record-breaking high temperature in a July or August day at Willard, but it doesn't actually break the record because the record goes from the long-term running station at Water Survey, and we may have been 3 or 4 degrees cooler there. It's same thing in the wintertime, only reverse, because that open air at Willard can cool down so much more quickly. They could be 4 or 5, if not 6 or 7 degrees cooler in a winter night than we are, because that kind of urban heat island effect that even gets that far south where the water survey is. So there can be big differences in temperature even. But again, when we break a record or set a new record, that record is relative to that 100 and now 40, almost 40-year record of observations at the water survey, not at Willard. The precipitation thing, I mean, we think this time of the year in July and in August, we get those pop-up thunderstorms where, I mean, it's not even between Willard and water survey. It can be one building at the water survey and the next building at the water survey can have, half an inch of difference just because of the really big gradients in rainfall. So that's another big thing is when we look at the rainfall, the report at Willard, it may not match, and it could be as much as an inch or so off from what's measured at the water survey. And they're both correct. It just is representing two different areas.
Two different locations there. I know there's might be a lot of people that are watching, since we're kind of talking about, weather observation stations and whatnot. Some people have just a regular old personal weather station at home. Others, there's a program, CocoRoss. Mm-hmm. And so if there are people that are interested in maybe wanting to help add into additional data points and things, how could somebody go about maybe doing that to maybe help out and kind of just add to the whole overall process?
Yeah, the first one, the easiest one is CocoRoss, like you mentioned. It's CocoRahs.org. It is a collection of citizen weather observers. There's, I think, thousands of them across the country. They get a specific rain gauge. It's like $30 to order it online with shipping. And I guarantee, I tell all the farmers that I talk to, I guarantee it's more accurate than whatever free rain gauge you picked up at the Farm Progress show. Yeah. Much more. And it holds up to 11 inches of rain. Hopefully you'll never have to fill the whole thing. And the nice thing is it comes with a nice app. And so you can measure once a day how much rain you got, and then for winter, how much snow you got, you can melt it and report that. Not only does that help an individual understand how much rain they got, because we just talked about, if somebody lives by the water survey and they're using Willard, we could see some big differences there. And you and I, even before we jumped on, talked about just across a small town, you could see some big differences. So that's important, but also that CocoRoss data now gets fed into our real-time weather feeds. So all of the weather and climate data that we're using for our research and for monitoring and for communication is including those CocoRoss stations. And as you can imagine, if we have, our observation at Willard and our observation at Water Survey, that's fine. But if we have 5 or 6, or because it's Champaign-Urbana, we have 15 CocoRoss observers, now we're really starting to see what the gradients look like. And so it's a really good program. So definitely encourage anybody who's either already measuring rain or is interested in it to join up, because it's a really great program.
Is that like a free? I mean,
it's a free program. The app is free. You don't need the app necessarily. You can enter the data online. The only cost is the $30 rain gauge. And I will put this out there that your local state climatologist has probably 3 dozen CocoRoss gauges in his office. So you can reach out to me, email, call, and maybe I can hook you up.
There you go. Fantastic. So here's the thing, Trent. We've barely scratched the surface. Do you think you could stick around for another episode here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll
Absolutely.
tell you what. So we're out of time for this episode, but we're going to come back next week, and Trent is going to be with us again. We're going to get into some more climate topics and whatnot, but we just kind of scratched the surface on some things. So we're going to have him come back with us here next week. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's fantastic. Okay, so there you go, guys. That is Dr. Trent Ford there with the Illinois State Climatologist there, and we'll bring him back in studio again for next week. For now, though, that's going to wrap things up here for another edition of Behind the Forecast. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and we'll see you again next week.